So my name is Sebastian. I'm working as a PR guy, mainly helping startups getting press. So the work I've done and we've done in teams reappeared on New York Times, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, the Next Web. You can mention it. We've probably been there, especially in the Western market. But I have the feeling that right now we need to take a step back, because what I hear from many founders is an excuse for them to be successful later on. It's once we get featured on TechCrunch, once we get featured on the Next Web, once we get featured there, or we get funding, or blah blah blah, then we're going to be successful. And that is plain wrong. But before I go on giving a generic pitch of how awesome I am, because a few of you left already, I'm sure you're hungry. I'm going to ask a few questions. Who of you are founders, developers working in apps or building in startups? Just raise your hand. What is the rest doing? Honestly, no, that's a surprise. I thought most of you are developers. Man in the white shirt, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, I guess I'm really wrong here. What is your job? Can anyone translate? Now this is really important, because if I go on talking for 20 minutes...
I'm manager of developers team who drive around new projects, new ideas, and realize it.
Okay. Who of you is a manager? What is the rest doing? What are you doing? Okay, so we have a few managers. Then one more question. We're going to do the interview a little later. Who of you dreams to be successful, make money out of apps? Dmitry does. Okay, at least a few of you. So you want to be successful, and I guess the rest of you also want to be successful. But what we're looking at here right now, everybody's asking me, so how do you do PR? How do you make someone successful? And why do you work for startups, especially the ones that are unknown, that you've never heard of, and getting them into the press? One thing that we have to look here is PR for startups. One thing that is really cool about this job is that you start at the very beginning, and it's not about just getting the message out. It's really simple, framing a message, making any one of you famous, even the ones who think there's nothing special about me. Trust me, we can do that and make you upworthy, if you know the website. But there's one thing that we need to look at when we talk about apps, when we talk about the whole concept of creating a message. What most of the people get wrong is you do a development exercise. You build an app, you feel proud because you've used the latest technology. It's really fast. It loads instantly. And I talked to a few founders out there, and they told me how their app is working perfectly, scanning products in a magazine. And then I asked them, all right, how is it working in real life with the users? I told them my perspective. If I would get an app saying, scan any product and we give you the cheapest price and you can pay it right away, I would point at you, take a picture of your shirt and say, hey, really cool, I want to have that. Then they started telling me, well, that's not really working, but we are working with magazines really well, billboards. Well, shitty thing is, most of the people don't care what special case you're in. They want to make it work in their own scenario. And here's a perfect example. If I would go on making my pitch for the next 20 minutes, we were supposed to have an interview, but it's really important. And half the room would leave. This is how we treat our users. This is how most of the people that I talk to, that are founders who are really proud of their product. Yeah, I'm a founder, I'm CEO, I'm CTO, I'm whatever. And I built this really cool app that I like to use. But the thing is, nobody is really trying to understand the other side. And one thing that is very important, and let me make this really clear, you are not building apps. Of course you are, technically, but the thing is, you try to make someone's life better. At least that should be the perfect scenario. But what we forget along the way, when we try to be productive, when we try to increase productivity and revenue, and we like to make it faster and simpler, one thing we forget is the other side. And the people I like to look at the most when it comes to apps is not the tech-savvy people we are sitting here. Like we all know, we can distinguish Android from iOS. We know probably KitKat is the latest release from Google Android, and we can install apps, and we can name 15 different productivity apps. The thing is, what most people do, like my girlfriend or my mother, she's she needs something, she can barely find the App Store icon, she types something in, and she's taking the first thing that's there. And if it doesn't do the thing that she does, she's gone, or she doesn't even open the app. So we have really, really dramatic scenario here that we like to, that we don't like to look at, because we sit in our tiny office and we develop our app, it's shiny, we push it out. And just like Joseph from Telecom said earlier, the way we expected things to work is we do something, we push it out, and people will buy it. That's no longer the case, you know it, I don't say anything new. So before I go on like this, let's get to the point how I do PR. One of the most important things is when I get started with a startup, or no matter what size, it can be you're in the App Store already, or maybe you're really unknown like the two last companies I worked for. And what I look at in the very first place is what is there, who are the founders. You all know the scenarios where they tell you you need to be authentic, you need to do it in a furious way, you need to be really, really clever. Well, the thing is you can only do what's there, right? And the problem with many things is you look for guidance from other examples. Let's take the productivity app. We look at Wunderlist, we look at OmniFocus, we look at what's the other one? Clear. And of course, Chaos Control. And
Chaos Control is an important one.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really good. You should check it out. And the thing is, we try to copy it or make single features better. But then again, look on the other side, because the user doesn't give a shit. If you, well, some of them do if they're disappointed with one product, and then they switch to your side. But if the other side changes the feature, then your benefit is gone. And what many people do, and maybe some of you do it too, is you look at your feature and you think, wow, this is my USP, this is what makes me special. Most of the people don't care. They don't care about your product, they don't care about your company, they don't care, they just want to make their own life better, except if you give them something special. And this is where we come to the point, how can you make yourself unique? And then we come to another problem. When you are a developer or you have a company with a very business focus, usually go very careful. So you say, well, we're going to implement this feature, then we're going to implement this feature, and you see steady growth, you have a few more users, but if the very foundation is wrong, that you don't understand them and that you don't really improve their life, then it's vanity metrics. Then we come to a point when you really want to make a business, and that means if you look at the conversion rate, like 50% drop after the install, or let's say 30%. So we have 70% remaining from the people who found your app in the App Store, who downloaded it, you have 70%. Then there is, let's say 70% of them open the app. Great. But then over 1 month, you lose pretty much 50, 60, 70% of them, which means you have a remaining 20%. And which is nice, we have an exercise in the beginning saying, hey, cool, I published my app, we have a few thousand downloads, but if you want to make a business out of it, you need hundreds of thousands, most likely, if you don't really bootstrap it, you're just on your own. But I guess most of you are here to make money, because money makes our life easier, and it enables us to do things. The really hard thing is to be patient in the very beginning and to do research, like I did, asking you questions, and I was really surprised that I didn't see more hands. But
they just do share it.
Okay, and most likely I speak too fast. But kind of when you're passionate about something, you just go on and on and on. And one of the most important steps, and this is actually one of the very few lessons that I would like to get across here in a very chaotic way, is that before you think about growth and before you run, look at the very foundation. And if your app is just one of many and you don't care and you never thought about your user, not even PR can help you. I can promise you a good PR guy and a good marketing guy, and the person who got me here is right there, Olga Scheider, she's the marketing director of Linko, a startup. Great person to talk to. She has it in her DNA, like so many others do it as well. They can get your message across. They can get you on TechCrunch with a story that we create. That's going to happen. But the thing is, you're going to lose all of these customers because if the very foundation of your app is not working, which means if you have thought about the other side, and that's the only side that matters. I don't know how much time we have.
10 minutes.
Okay, maybe we should go through the other questions because there's so many things more we can tell. One thing right away I think at 4, we're looking at 3 startups and going directly through the details. everything in generic that I just said. What does it mean for a product to be transformed into PR and marketing in order to make it successful, since most of us want to be at the top. So feel free to join us here, and I guess right now we're taking it a bit slower and going through a few questions. Right?
Yeah, well, I like your approach, Sebastian, straight to the point. I was initially wanted to ask you, if you're your first time in Moscow, stuff like that, how do you like it, but you just started to share your wisdom. Alright, so, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, just to better understand where all these your ideas came from?
Yeah, that's so a long time ago, I think it was around 10 years ago, I started as a journalist. I was really one of these guys that wanted to change the world, make the world better through stories and helping humanity as a whole. But I found out very soon that it wasn't really working, because all we did was filling empty space in the newspaper or the radio, filling minutes, and the next day the story was forgotten. So I've been doing journalism for, I think, 4 or 5 years in total, with a few freelance gigs. And after a while I just got bored. And at that time, when I was working at the radio station, they had a PR department, and that was the first contact after my studies that I had with practical PR. And the good thing about PR is you have more creativity, you have a bigger budget, and a lot more freedom to do the things that you want to do. And that's how I got into the PR business. Afterwards, I was working for different agencies and the big corporation. I found out that corporate is not really my style, because you have only one job and you can't experiment. And at that point, Six Wunderkinder was popping up in Germany. I'm sure many of you know it. It's this productivity app, and they were very famous for creating a dramatic hype around the product, which was just a to-do app, a shiny one, and it was free.
And I was about Wunderlist, right?
Say again?
You were talking about Wunderlist, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Wunderlist, a to-do app. And I was working with them for a few months, but honestly it wasn't really working, because we had different work philosophies.
Can you explain why? What were the differences?
Yeah, so Christian, the founder, he is very, very ambitious. He always had the idea of building the next Apple, of building the next Facebook. And my approach was always a little bit more down to earth. I thought, we have a really shiny product and we can tell great stories, but I don't really see it as the next Apple. So after a few months of working together, and I couldn't really get it across, also the messaging that he wanted, we just said, it's not really working. At that time, a few other guys left from Six Wunderkinder, very smart guys, developers, and we thought, okay, now we do it on our own. We worked for 9 months as founders. We were sitting in my apartment building a login system for a website that works without passwords, and we thought it's really, really clever. But I can tell you, I made all the mistakes possible. So whenever you think about the mistakes, I made it, like ruining the team, not finding investment, slippery products. We thought about stealth mode and protecting through patents. So we did the whole thing, and after 9 months we said, this is not really working, let's better stay friends. And at that time I was helping already another startup, just a little bit of advice on how to do PR. And they asked me to join them full-time, and for me personally, I think that's really important. This was the very first challenge to convince myself that I can do PR. When I joined Six Wunderkinder, there was Jess Erickson. She's incredible, she's a PR machine. And so basically she did the very foundation already, and I just joined and managed a little bit of Europe. So this was the first time for me to bring an unknown startup into the media. Like in Germany we have a few very large newspapers, we have then the blog scene for early adopters. And I thought, okay, if I can bring these guys into the press, I'm not an idiot and I can do what I do. And it worked, so we were quite lucky over a year. And after a year, I knew I wanted to do something on my own again, and at that time I had a few great people, and they had an idea that I was always passionate about, which is starting something for a good cause, a non-profit. And we looked at the startup scene in Germany, which is quite developed in a few areas, but still very early stage, and we saw many founders, like I did early on, make the same mistakes over and over again, which is they always sit in their little cubicle or in their little office and they try to reinvent the wheel over and over again. I guess many of you know the thing. You try to reinvent everything, how you design the product, how you run a company, how you hire people. And we thought, most of the people starting, it's great that they have these ideas, but they're lacking the network, and they're lacking the funding, and they're lacking the experience of the right people. So why not give it to them and look for large corporations who fund the thing? That was going on for half a year. Then I had to take a break because, I don't know, I put too much pressure on myself. I really tried to be awesome and perfect, which stopped me from doing much. So at that point I said, you know what, I'm holding everyone back. So I get back to do what I think I can do, which is getting press and framing the story and helping startups getting noticed.
Yeah, good there. Okay, so can you please share a couple of tricks how to, get some traction and create attention for startups? So assume that we've got a product already. So what are steps just to create attention?
Okay, so
for media in
yeah.
particular.
Okay, so the very first thing is we assume that you've done all the basics, you know your users, you have a few customers already, so you know that your product is working. At that point you're wondering, all right, how do I get press? And usually the good thing is, let's say we're looking at early adopters, right? The tech scene, which are usually the ones reading blogs, let's say TechCrunch, the Next Web, whatsoever. I'm not really sure what's going on in Russia, but they all work the same because they need to fill the space to get clicks. And this is where we come to a very important point already. What most people forget is that it's not really, it's all about the story and the headline. What then the content is, as you know, when you read articles, you're always disappointed that the content doesn't hold true. But so this is the very first lesson. You need to create a story which is interesting, again, from the other side, from journalists. And what works are usually four pillars. The most important and the strongest one is human beings and emotions. If you have a story that you can tell, and there is always a story to tell, no matter if I pick you, or you sitting here with the camera, or the other ones. Most of the people think we're ordinary, but if you find something, and I'm sure you always find something, this is a great story. There was recently a survey, just to give a few numbers, among journalists, how they evaluate the things that they get from startups, which is usually tech news, right? And 60% said they hate the information that they get. Because usually we read the announcement and we think we need to copy that. So either it's funding, either it's product information, or it's something. But then again, most of the time nobody really cares about the product if you're just similar to something else. So you need to find a story. There are a few things that you can say. Either it's a personal story where you say, I really struggled with this, but now I did it, which is cool. Or you say you have this famous David versus Goliath fight, like you're a small player against the big one. Startup I'm working with right now, they're called Spiffy. Nobody has ever heard of them, and what they're building is a taxi dispatch system. That is really boring. It's really clever on the inside, which means all the old taxi companies, they get a new system which brings the service from Uber to them. But if you try to explain the story to a journalist, he will not get it because he doesn't see a story right away. So you can frame it in many different ways. For example, right now in Germany there's a big fight going on. Uber is coming to Germany, and you have My Taxi and the other ones, and they try to bypass the law and pretty much take over the taxi market. And of course the old taxi industry, a really old industry that hasn't innovated for the last 20 years, which means they're working with software that was developed in Windows 98, and it's really shitty and really expensive. And now they're going on the barricades. They try to get hold of them through law enforcement or whatsoever. And the good thing is we have a perfect story right here. Even though they don't have a product yet, it's ready. They don't have revenue, and nobody's ever heard of them. But you have this really great story. The founder's coming from Portugal. He came to Berlin. He brought in young people from all over the world, which I'm sure you also have different nationalities where you have a story as well. And so we have the perfect David versus Goliath, saying, you know what, I know this guy, and he's fighting alongside the taxi industry against Uber, what is happening right now. You have a perfect story there already. I didn't send a press release, I didn't send the full story. The emails I usually write to journalists, it's very simple. You go to Google News, you go to your competition, say who wrote about them, you go to the same story journalists, and you write them a 1 or 2 paragraph email pitch saying, this is what we do, and this is where we think, what needs to change. You need to grab them where they think, wow, this is really newsworthy. It's a very abstract term, newsworthy, what is newsworthy? But in the end, it's everything that the reader connects to emotionally, or where you have a feeling, or when there's a surprising fact. For example, again, the last company I worked for, Spiffy, I sat together with them for 3 days, and that's one of the key things I think a good PR person does, a marketing person, no matter the title, is they can take a step back outside of your company. They're not there to give you compliments, saying you're really great, you're doing a great product. No, he's the one asking the tough questions. Do you really think that's working? What's driving you? And you can be honest, saying, I just want to make money. Making money can be a great story. I know it looks, with the right frame, it's going to be interesting. You just need to be honest. But coming back to the person, is he can take a step back and he can be the bad cop. I asked them for 3 days about their childhood, about their girlfriends, about how they moved over the last couple of years, and there are so many interesting stories hidden inside the founders without even mentioning the product, that there's a whole world of opportunity where you can go to journalists. This is so many information. I guess afterwards, if you want to chat over lunch, your specific case, come to me. But let me try to come up with a few more things. So right now we have people. Think about the people in your company. Are they special? And there's always something special about them. The second one is of course your product, how you build it, and what's new about it. You can always, special interest magazines are always interested in that. The third one is interesting facts, and that's what I wanted to tell with Spiffy. Again, the taxi industry, it's really, really boring. Like when you look outside, you see the yellow cabs everywhere, but what most people don't know, that only 15% of the taxi industry are made through public orderings, and 85% is done by large corporations spending billions. The UK market is a 10 billion market. And some people that drive you around for example, in Paris, for a person to become a taxi driver, he pays up to 250,000 euro for a license. That is a number that everybody will jump on, because you go, holy shit, that person took a mortgage on a house just to drive you around. And there again, you have everything. You have an interesting fact, and you have a story to tell, and you can link it to your product. These are the people that we try to connect to. And so, all right, again, so we have the people in the company, your customers, which is also great. If you have a community, or if you have something where people create something with your product, feature them, tell them their personal story, make it high quality. Then we have the interesting facts, we have the product, and then again you have outside events. This is the most regular one, where you say elections are coming up, or you have holidays. It always works if you say, oh, by the way, we have this great offer for them, or hey, this is how, for example, let's take Zalando, one of the companies everybody hates in the startup industry because it's rocket internet. They're just there to make money, and they're really bad to employees. But what they do, whenever there's a season or whenever there's a special occasion, they send out a list to journalists. Oh, this could be a great dress. Or by the way, what's Princess Leia, I don't know, did in Star Wars. We have the dress now, so that's also something you can relate to. Is that helpful?
Yeah, well, I like this quote of yours. Everybody has an interesting story to tell. Yeah, and I know, yes, that's actually true. So I like this idea of yours. All right, Sebastian, unfortunately we are running out of time.
Can I one last thing?
Sure.
Because everybody's always wondering in the beginning, oh shit, I need to hire a PR agency, I need to hire a PR expert. This is not actually true. I'm really sure most of you have a crazy friend. Someone like me who's kind of crazy and has weird ideas. These are the people that you can talk to. So you don't need an expert in the beginning, because the very first steps are always the same. You look for the name of the people that you want to reach, usually journalists, but also it can be other influencers. Bloggers are very big, for example, in the fashion industry. You go to them, you pitch them very shortly, and the thing is how to find the stories. Don't tell it yourself, or first you tell it a friend, and then you let them repeat what they understood. And there you see already if it's working, and then you ask someone to have fun with your product. Tell them, when there were no limitations, there's no embarrassment, no whatsoever, what would you do with the app? One last example, we just have 2 minutes, and then I guess it's lunchtime. For example, the company, the startup I talked to, what they do, they have an app where you scan a picture and they provide you a list with products that look similar. In the end, it's a regular product, right? You scan something, you get something in return. But now let's think about how to make it clever. For example, they're most likely to attract women, right? And if they think about the perfect customers, they're women who have money. So let's say 25 to 35 and upper class whatsoever. And what do these women need? They don't need an app that scans something and gives them something in return, but they need a shopping assistant because they usually don't have time. Let's say they are very busy with their job. That's just the thing. I'm not really good at this because I'm not a woman. I don't want to use cliches, but I guess there are women out there like that. So in order to give them an app and just saying, hey, you can scan it here, make it personal, give your app character, make them the best friend of the person who's really using it. The woman saying, oh, by the way, here's your personal shopping assistant. It comes right in your pocket. You just take it out. I point at the woman's dress, which is very beautiful. I take a picture and I get a recommendation from my personal assistant who gives me either the cheapest price or he makes a witty comment saying, I think this would also look good on you. And there you have it, that you have an emotional connection. And the next time the woman, the user, is thinking about, oh, that dress looks great. I'm wondering who it is. Right now, I'm most likely she's never going to think, oh, maybe I can try this app. And if it doesn't have it, I can type in a comment, and then they might send me something back. I'm going to ask, let's call the app Amy. I'm going to ask Amy if she can give me a recommendation. I'm sure she will, because on the other side is somebody really caring about me. And that's, I think, a perfect example that you can use how to use PR, how to frame your product in a way that it gets character, that it gets emotional, and you have a perfect story to tell. You can go to 1 million journalists and fashion bloggers saying, by the way, we have the perfect assistant for any woman, and you don't have to make money for it. So, but that's it.
All right, so make it personal. That was very helpful, Sebastian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.